We begin today here in Nigeria, where the national leader of the All Progressives Congress is preparing to run for president in 2019, according to Arise's sister newspaper Thisday. Chief Bola Tinubu has been holding a series of meetings and consultations for his bid for the presidency. It's reported he's also putting together a campaign team and has developed a strategic plan in his bid for the coveted office. Sources say Tinubu has abandoned his original plan of aligning with the opposition People's Democratic Party, instead opting to remain in the ruling APC. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by the deputy editor of Thisday newspaper, Bolaji Adebi. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. You think he's just testing the waters to gauge public opinion, or do you think he's really going for it?
Well, I think he's really going for it. You will recall that last Friday he dropped a hint while attending the inauguration of the new governor of Ondo State, Governor Rotimi Akeredolu. Well, Tinubu has been in the fray for some time, and I think he's used to this kind of politicking.
What does that tell us about his relationship with President Buhari?
Well, I think that he may have been encouraged, into going to, running for the office because of the ill health of the president. Ordinarily, we would have expected that the ruling party will want to give the sitting president, a right of first refusal. But I don't think that they want to go through the kind of experience we went through under President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. So once the ill health of the president became public, I think that they are also just trying to make alternative arrangements.
Right. Well, I mean, we know that Mr. Tinubu just visited Mr. Buhari in London a couple of weeks ago, as Mr. Buhari's medical leave remains shrouded in mystery. You think he knows something we don't, possibly about the president's health?
Well, I think that his visit to President Buhari will also have given him a first-hand assessment of the health of the president. Now, we will not expect him to say all that he knows, but definitely he surely knows more than we do know. Now, I think you also notice that it's not only him that is preparing. There is also a top contender in the party, the APC, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who has also been, consulting leaders of the party, nationwide.
Right. So how are the top guns in the ruling APC party likely to react to this? I mean, after all, it was Tinubu who was behind the formation of the party, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he played a key role, in the formation of the party. What would be the reaction of leaders of the party? Well, I think that everyone will now be making their own political calculations. Tinubu, is used to this kind of politicking. You recall that he was the one that led, what the alliance that culminated in what they call the Action Congress, which was formed in 2006. It was supposed to also be a mega party.
Right.
It was put together to challenge the ruling PDP then, but it did not grow, as big as they wanted it. Now, around 2013, it was also that started this movement that culminated into the APC. In fact, he was the one that convinced President Buhari, to come into the race. So I think that, well, everybody is doing his political calculations, and I don't think he wants to be caught napping.
Will President Buhari's political associates and close aides see this move by Mr. Tinubu as a betrayal?
Well, they might see it that way, but this is politics. Everybody will make his own arrangements.
Meanwhile, of course, the Information Minister, Lai Mohammed, says he spoke to President Buhari on Saturday and his condition is not critical. What does that tell us about the state of the president's health?
Well, I think Nigerians must be tired with all this talk of people speaking with the president. The president has a spokesperson, and the president himself had also written a communication to the National Assembly. I think we need to stay by that. All this talk of we have spoken to the president, this other person has spoken to the president, I think Nigerians are already tired of that.
Right.
If the president is okay, and I believe he's okay, All he needs to do is to speak to Nigerians.
Okay,
So that will be saved all this problem of I spoke to him, that person spoke to him.
Right. Just very quickly, can we now say incontrovertibly, based on your investigations and your sources, that Chief Bola Tinubu is planning to make a bid for the presidency in 2019?
We don't have any doubt that he's already making his plans for 2019.
Okay, Bolaji, deputy editor of Thisday newspaper, thank you ever so much.
You're welcome.
Now, this week, the Nigerian government opened a major international trade fair in the northern city of Kaduna, aimed at showcasing the country's investment potential to the world. It's part of the government's plan for tackling the recession and diversifying the economy, which is still heavily dependent on oil as its main source of revenue. A spokesman for the Nigerian government said the administration was committed to partnering with the private sector to speed up the transformation of the economy. Well, earlier I spoke to Yewande Sadiku, the head of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission.
Hopefully it's not a temporary blip. We think they're all signs of several efforts by government at improving the conditions of operating in Nigeria and the experience of investors who come to Nigeria. But they're only a fraction of the reforms that are in the works to see increased participation by investors, in my view, both foreign and domestically in the Nigerian economy.
And of course, Nigeria eyeing another Eurobond sale of $500 million before the end of March. Is the perception in government circles that market conditions are currently favorable?
I think it is. I think the market has spoken. I think the reception that Nigeria received when it issued the last Eurobond is resounding proof of the fact that the markets are receptive to Nigeria.
And might that optimism be dented, that confidence hurt by the continued uncertainty over the, some would say, unexplained medical leave and indefinite absence of President Buhari?
There are extensive constitutional provisions for what should happen in the president's absence. I believe business and governance in Nigeria have continued in the president's absence. I believe the acting president is doing a good job.
But we know that confidence is often affected when there's uncertainty. I mean, one of the reasons foreign investors put their money in places is because of guarantees of political stability. Where there is a suggestion of political instability, and I'm not suggesting that there is political instability in Nigeria, but reading it as a foreign investor, does that concern you?
I actually think foreign investors don't invest because of a guarantee of political stability, because nobody guarantees political stability. It's because of the perception and the expectation of political stability. And I don't see any concern with that in Nigeria.
Right.
As NIPC, we are not concerned about it. We don't see any reason to worry, because in the president's absence, the business of governance and the business of commerce in Nigeria has carried on as normal.
So just tell us, from your perspective as the head of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, what the government is doing to step up its economic reforms enough to impress investors.
So last year, the president inaugurated the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, headed by the vice president, with the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment as the vice chair. That council, has been focused on improving the conditions for companies and the experience of businesses operating in Nigeria.
Right, but what is the strategy, the plan, the roadmap for attracting skeptical international investors to Nigeria?
We hope that they will be persuaded by the reality of the reforms as they kick in. As you know, reforms take a while, especially if you're working with a country as big and as complex as ours.
Right.
There are 10 initiatives that the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council has been focused on. There's a secretariat that works solely and independently on this and operates out of NIPC's office. That is headed by one of the vice president's special advisors on trade and investment, and has a number of reform leaders from the public and private sectors.
Do you have a headline figure that you're aiming for as far as foreign direct investment is concerned? Because Nigeria has roughly a 6 trillion naira budget, but it is a 100 trillion naira economy. So your job is to trigger and attract the rest of that 94 trillion naira into this economy. I mean, how are you going to do that?
Around 2012, 2013, Nigeria actually generated about $21 billion of foreign investment in both portfolio and direct investment. We're hoping that by 2019 we can restore Nigeria's investor participation, foreign investor participation, to levels similar to that. But we also expect to encourage Nigerians to invest in Nigeria.
Right.
So historically, we've had a focus. In fact, we've had a focus almost exclusively on foreign direct investors. Increasingly now, we are bringing portfolio investors into the universe of our focus, but we're also focused on driving what I would call domestic direct investors, which is encouraging Nigerians to invest in their country. We see a fair bit of Nigerian participation in the stock markets already, but we don't see as much when it comes to direct investments.
Right. But that is a good focus, though. I mean, your critics, though, I mean, the government's critics say that by holding back from coming up with corrective sort of business-friendly policies for as long as you did, I mean, for 6 months, this country didn't have a cabinet. And therefore, you were providing little direct or comfort to those who play with the 94 trillion that you need to kind of fill the gap. That essentially you've shortchanged the Nigerian economy.
Well, I mean, whatever happened in the past, in reality, it is in the past. The only thing we can do now is to focus on the future and the things that we will do in the future to improve business conditions, to improve the experience of investors in Nigeria, and to encourage investors to continue to participate in Nigeria. And
is the apparent gain on the dollar the result of, central bank's policies? I mean, are those just market? I mean, that may not be directly your province, but we've got you here. Is that as a result of central bank policies and therefore government policies, or just market forces acting independently?
I think it was a number of things. The market reacted in relation to a new policy that the central bank announced. So it wasn't just the central bank's policy alone, It was also the market's reception to it.
Right, okay. Now, one of the things you've also done, which people have called for a long time, is the easing of visa restrictions. Just tell us how that's going to work now. What difference? Because, I mean, you've had visa on arrival and all that sort of thing, and one of the big challenges people face is just getting a visa to come into Nigeria.
The traditional principle of diplomacy is reciprocity. So if I need a visa to come to your country, if you need a visa to come to my country, you do likewise. The recent reforms are around considering Nigeria's own interest rather than simply the principle of reciprocity.
Yeah, because obviously you need the foreign investor here more than they need you there.
Correct. And for a number of countries where Nigeria has a strategic commercial interest, the object is to have a visa policy that is receptive and supportive of Nigeria's aspirations.
Now, in South Sudan, thousands of people at the epicenter of a man-made famine are struggling to stay alive. Families have resorted to gathering water lilies for food. People eat once a day if they're lucky, but at least in the swamps,